Asian population who had to build the railroads out west. So it never stops. It's
Right.
continual. Who will be the victims next of this onslaught of hate under a legalized package? Let's make that clear. Their hate and the injustice is packaged inside legalese. So if they're using the legal arm of the law to be unjust, how do you unravel it anyway?
That's a great question. Brother Saw, you like to add on with this?
Well, there's not much more to add on to that. That was a wonderful analysis as far as how white supremacy has, impacted, Africans and Africans American and Africans throughout the diaspora in a negative way. One thing I would like to say is that this oppression and exploitation and dominance, by the Europeans and white supremacy and imperialism, goes back thousands and thousands of years ago. And I think that, sometimes we have to really go back into history to understand what's going on today. One book that I like to always recommend is The Destruction of Black Civilization, which goes back thousands and thousands of years ago and shows the invasions by the high schools, the Persians, the Europeans, the Arabs, and everybody else, the British who basically invaded Africa and the impact that they had, negative impact on Africa. That in itself is a miscarriage of justice. I think when we talk about a miscarriage of justice, that it goes deeper than just what basically happens in the courtroom.
That's
Because
right.
when we talk about crimes against humanity, just like the when we talk about Leopold from Belgium, right, and the impact of killing 20 million Africans in the Congo, which is a crime against humanity. So this injustice of white supremacy is all, based off of not just racism, but, like we had spoke on last week, capitalism, right? And that's the continuous, dominance and exploitation of black people. So it's had a really negative impact on us as a group of people. And the one thing that like I say, the destruction of black civilization by Chancellor Williams is a good book that I recommend for everybody, because then we'll start to really understand the Western mind, or the Western sickness.
Right. Yeah. And Destruction of the Black Civilization is a great read, and it's a must read.
Right.
And to say Leopold, just to follow up on, you said killed 20 million Africans in Congo country,
Yes.
country of Congo, right? And that's something in history that's not much talked about or shine upon.
And if I may, brother, also because I think this is really important, right? Because there's a lot of things that's taking place in the Congo right now, right? And we all know about, well, not all of us, but some of us know about Patrice Lumumba and how he was murdered in 1961 as the prime minister for Congo. And, how his movement and his way of politics was for the people. And that's why basically they targeted him and murdered him, right? And, as Brother Mac has spoke on this show before, it set Congo back 100 years. And now with so much conflict in Congo, so much murder, so much genocide, and the world really isn't speaking up on this. The same that's taking place in Sudan and as well as Gaza. So that's something that we really got to understand is Congo has resources, and I'm pretty sure that the fight is for economics to see who can control the resources, the economics, to sell to the Western powers or sell to the Asians.
Right. And that tells me something. Like the resources for the United States usually was the people of African descent, and the war over here for their resources here was the Civil War at the time, and so it's always carrying on for the power gain, war on each land, injustice in all systems. But so and the system has been guilty of of eyewitness miseducation, misidentification. Excuse me, country eyewitness misidentification, false confessions, perjury, persecutorial misconduct, and also at the heart of biasness, if that's even considered a word, biasness. I don't know, but bias in courts
We'll
and
take it.
law, bias in the heart of men and women with power. Period. And I've been freshening. I've been watching some Law and Order, freshening it up. if y'all
Oh,
like
wow.
that, yeah. But anyway, when you look at these systemic patterns, the false confessions, the police misconduct, the biased forensic reports, do you see this as individual corruption or as evidence of a system functioning exactly as it was designed to?
Well, of course, I think we all know that this system is functioning exactly how it was designed to function. And I again, being an educator, I'm one who believes in definitions or terms, and I often say, what system would you join that deliberately enslaves you? So obviously, you may not be a part of a system, but a part of a Holocaust or some form of entrapment, a government that forces you to work with them in order to survive. And that is why it's so difficult to separate when it's time that we start talking about, the racial disparities or the the targeting that happens. We have African Americans who work for these quote unquote systems, but they're not allowed to do anything about it because the government is comprised of white supremacy. Like the foundation itself is white supremacy. So it's not where African Americans can say, hey, I don't want to be a part of something that is corrupt or what have you, because it's so intertwined until basically you cannot do without them. It's the very system that is disfranchising you, or like you have here, the medical practices.
Right.
We've seen eugenics. We've seen experiments done on African Americans, and it's so intertwined until even the church have given themselves as a conduit for it to happen. Case in point, the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. The black church was summoned almost or recruited to be a place where their locations were where blacks would meet to be picked up. So look at how trusting we are because we see ourselves one with the government. This is our American system. So when they recruit us to say, "Hey, could you use your church as a bus stop for us to pick up your," we got these humble Negroes that say, "Well, show, yes, you can, Mister So and So," and it's almost disturbing how we'll turn, servant when the government comes around. Yeah, I've grew up in church. Well, when we have a prestigious politician who's running for office come to our church and want to say a few words, we have the illustrious and these big names that we give these politicians. But these politicians don't always protect us, because if they didn't, we still wouldn't be apologizing for racism today.
Right. Right. Brother, son.
Yeah, yes. One thing, that I don't want to sound hard or harsh, but Dr. Kim had mentioned about us being trustworthy, right? And I think that the trustworthy, unfortunately, is ignorance, right? And not knowing, and like we spoke on before, knowledge dispels ignorance,
Right.
right? We can't be so trustworthy where we hand ourselves over to the enemy for experiments. Like how they use the church to get the people. So I just think that that's important, right? That to understand that anything that they have to offer us is not going to be good for us. from the time, that we was brought over here and enslaved as a people.
Right.
Right. So when we're talking about justice and injustice, anytime you have to talk about justice, that means that there's injustice.
That's right.
Right.
That's
Right.
good.
So we have to really understand that, like Dr. Kim had, stated from your question, yes, it's intentionally designed like this. And it's not just a United States phenomenon. This is a global phenomenon.
Absolutely.
In dealing with, Africans and brothers and sisters, black people of African descent. And it was one thing that, Marcus Garvey spoke on over 100 years ago. Everywhere that he went, how Africans were oppressed, right, and exploited, and the conditions were the same
Yes.
as far as economics, as far as healthcare, right. And I think that the healthcare aspect is so important when we're talking about justice, because what it does, it creates unnecessary deaths, from our babies to the mothers, to our elderly, because we don't get the proper health care, and that's why, knowledge is so important. And as Dr. Kim spoke about our professionals, it's important for our professionals to step up and do the right thing, right? And the right thing is to make sure that, African people, black people get proper health care, get proper education, everything basically on a high level. And we have, the capabilities, and we have, the experts where we can make this happen ourselves.
That's right.
Right? But unfortunately, going back to what Dr. Kim said as far as us being trustworthy, it's not just the ones who basically don't know, but even the ones who so-called are educated, by still thinking that one day that, the white man and the white woman are going to accept us as equals, which I feel like they're not our equal. But we're always talking about equality with them. But to be equal to them would be to be murderers, to be thieves, to create genocide, and a lot of other negative things that they've done, throughout the course of history. So I think we should watch what we say we want, right? I think that we have to understand, as African people, we have our own value systems, right? We have our own principles, ethical codes of behavior on how to conduct ourselves. We just have to go back and remember the ways of our ancestors and what they basically was able to put down, to create civilization.
Right.
Absolutely. And it's a survival game, because remember now, these institutions prepare you to serve in their world in westernized society. So when we go through institutions of learning or higher learning, what we're actually doing is taking on the mindset of that who is teaching us, so that we can serve in the manner that they would. Now, what we have to do is remember that, as much as we don't want to say this, our body types could be different, is different. We have melanin, something very simple, which, we have been taught to oppress, talking about that melanated skin and the difference between the two. And I'll give you a prime example. African American women have certain health or genetic dispositions that requires another level of vitamin D. We came from a continent, that had more sunshine, that was warmer, and that our body complemented the sun. We were one. So guess what? You take us out of that environment, you bring us to a colder climate where there could be ice storms, it could be cold climates, it could be snow, something that the African continent is not privy to.
Right.
So then when you send our black people through medical school, are you preparing them to, or even your own, are you preparing them to serve their people? Right. How is society serving their people? Because believe it or not, the state of North Carolina or the DPI system says that children are supposed to get at least this many minutes of recreation outside. Sunlight outside is healthy. But because we are melanated, we may need extra time.
Right.
Something so simple is so missed because they're not training us to teach or serve our population.
Right.
And they would not dare give that because we're not worthy to get that extra health attention. Instead, they would rather negate it or neglect it before they address it. And remember, we don't rock the boat because we're in their world. So even our medical professions or our nurses or whomever who go to a HBCU
Yeah.
school, who you would hope has that specialty. We always have doctors, but we also have specialty doctors.
That's right.
What about these black professionals? Do you know how to care for the certain populations? Because we are different, even just based off melanated, the melanated people alone. So that's an injustice, whether it's intentional or not. It is. It is an injustice, and we have to be objective when we talk about learning, when we talk about education, and like you said, Brother Asar, knowledge is power. Knowledge is protection.
Yes.
Knowledge is direction, and perhaps we have to consider these things when we are adopting societal norms.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, and that's all great info because it could be simple as just getting us a little bit of extra vitamin D to balance our energy, and then that could simplify some of the ADD or ADHD.
Come on, Brother Essence.
You know what I mean? Just
It-
get them outside a little bit to balance their energy.
Right. How does that affect us mentally? How does that affect how do we perform? Do we perform better because we're in the sun? They'll come up with it and then they'll be brilliant. Well, it should have been a normal for us.
Right. Definitely. And y'all spoke just a second ago about how it's kind of is global. Also, it's not just a local thing.
Sure.
I'm gonna come back round to that in just one in a few because the UN did put in the 12 element program steps of that nature. I'm gonna come right back around to that. I wanna ask something about the human cost of the system. It was just explained that it's not an individual corruption. It's a system to maintain control. If I'm following correctly,
Yes.
right? So human cost from that, like it destroys wrongful convictions and all those type of things. Destroys black families, and it break lineages. So Dr. Kim, as a black woman carrying that type of emotional weight, how can communities begin to heal from that level of generational trauma?
Wow, that's powerful. First of all, we have to acknowledge that we're broken, and our culture have to, first of all, disassociate themselves with a broken mentality. That we deserve to be broken because after a while, if you don't acknowledge it, you become one with it, and you stay crippled forever. You start making a song out your crippled. You make a gang out your crip. You become a crip while you cripple. And before you know it, we have an entire generation of crippled beings, over time. And so in order for us to heal, we first have to say that we need to be made whole, and we deserve to be made whole. We should not be called resilient. We should not be. We know we are, but
Right.
what are you? I remember that little. As a kid, I know I can bounce back, but who are you to keep beating us? So first of all, we have to acknowledge the abuse. Just like in any relationship, America is an abuser. It's like we're in an abusive relationship, and we have become accustomed to living with our abuser. Women who live in marriages forever keep having children by the same abuser, because he got benefits. That's us. We think it's beneficial for us to be here and keep getting abused and waiting for this so-called man to treat us fair. We got to pass the something something act something act, only for you to act up again,
Right.
And the Indians, so the natives told us, the indigenous people told us they broke over 500 treaties. I'm going to use your Bible that says laws are for the lawless.
That makes sense.
Laws are for the lawless. The
Yeah.
reason why you keep making these laws is because from the time you made them, you knew you were going to break them. And before the native says before the ink was dry, you had already committed the next offense. You have no intentions of doing right. And the only thing that you do have that holds everybody hostage is domestic terrorism. If you have deputized your police force, you have deputized your teachers, you have deputized your medical industry, you have deputized every institution to uphold your racism and make us work with you in it, then we are not citizens. We are enslaved labor that gets paid.
Right.
Because you can't get your medical benefits without working with them.
Mm-hmm.
So we're basically tied to a system that we've basically said we we have become assimilated or associated, and we acknowledge that our abuser is our abuser, but we're just choosing to stay. And Martin Luther King told us, he said, I fear I have sent my people into a burning building. After wanting to be integrated and enforce integration, he knew, like, this is not gonna work. And so we are still at that place where, and that is why in our faces they can raise monuments, and our taxes go right to it. We finance our own abuse.
And mental psychology with them imageries or statues or something, whatever they're gonna put up through
Right.
the tax dollars.
200 years ago, and they still parade them in our faces. And now they moved on to the next generation, and each one of them remind you, they're Christians. These, you might as well compare these people to Adolf Hitler.
Wow.
When brother Assar talked about Leopold, how many people did he slaughter?
Over 20 million.
20 million. Now, mind you, Hitler only did 6 to 8 million.
Right.
Leopold had nothing on Leopold.
Yeah, right.
Hitler had nothing on Leopold.
Right.
Mind you, we still have photos of maimed children.
Right.
He cut off body parts and left you just standing there. In the picture, it's always devastating to see
Yeah.
these pictures that they glorify.
Right. Indeed.
The lynchings,
Right.
I'm like, yeah, where is Christianity
Right.
in this? Because we don't take photos of, we don't make movies of cut up bodies, and what's going on? Let's talk about the mental illness and I won't go that far out of there, but really we dealing with some sociopathic behaviors that if you don't catch them, and that's what makes the system so workable, is because it's protected under law.
Yeah, it makes them, and you should have continued on because the mental illness it's all connected, and just all connected as one. We did speak on the mental part, psychological side of it a week ago or so, though, so I can understand why you didn't go right back into it then. But the double standard of it, and brother, sorry, you want to speak on the
Yes.
generational trauma healing?
Yes, because
Yeah.
I think that's very important because, we have to always go back, to the mental and the psychological aspect. Like,
Yes.
as the sister said, as far as them being sociopaths and things of that nature. And I think, one thing as, African people that we need to do is take control over our own minds, right? And understand that their mind and their philosophy and way of doing things is not ours, right? We need to deal with that fact. And we also need to deal with the fact that we cannot expect them to be humanitarians, because based off of history, they've never been humanitarians. They have sought to seek and destroy whole nations of people through any means necessary. Through violence, through bribery, through robbery, through genocide.
Yes.
Right. So when we're talking about mental health, it keep coming to my mind that we're talking about their mental sickness, not our own.
Right.
Because their mental illnesses and sicknesses and diseases impact ours because of the damage they do through their activities of oppression
Absolutely.
and exploitation.
Right.
Right. So I don't think that we should ever look at it from a legal perspective like they're going to do anything legal that's going to protect us. Right.
That's true.
Because they have made laws designed to target us and oppress and destroy our communities just based off of the fact that we are black people, brothers and sisters of African descent, melanated people, right? So they use our melanin against us just on sight from a psychological perspective, not only for them but for us. Because when we see them, we think one thing. When they see us, they think another thing.
That's true.
Right? When they see us, they think what? Subordinate, right? Subservient, subhuman. When we see them, we know what we see. That these people have really affected us in such a negative way, through their behavior. And I'm not just talking about 5 or 10, 1,500 black people. I'm talking about over the course of history, billions and billions and billions.
That's right.
Right. That's why, our first principle that we teach in the virtues of the initiate is control your thoughts. And to control your thoughts means for your thoughts to be African-centered, right? That's going to be beneficial through the whole. And as we speak on every week on this show, know thyself, the knowledge of self, is the basis of all true knowledge. Because that way, when you have the knowledge of self, you understand your responsibility to you, your family, your community, and humanity, right? And it brings us closer together. But when we have perfect examples why black people, African people all over the world always have to fight for justice, always have to fight for equal rights, always have to fight for economic development and progress, as if we don't have the knowledge to be able to build for ourselves. But yet we have, the European Union, United Nations, the Asians, everyone invading Africa to explore Africa and make us feel like something's wrong with us when really something is wrong with them. Because if they leave us alone and if we get our minds together, which is the most important thing, not for them to leave us alone, but for us to get our minds together so that we know how to respond.
Right. And Dr. Kim just had a fabulous quote: "Law is for the lawless."
That's right.
Yeah. And so, if you just living righteously, then
Right. And there are examples out there, in almost practically every religion that tells you to treat your neighbor like you want to be treated.
Right.
Like, it's simple. Like, the stuff that he grew is for him, is not for you.
Right.
Or you cannot enslave your brother. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So, I mean, they have great examples of playbooks that we could use for humanity's course. Capitalism won't allow that. And the other issue, capitalism has, in order to have a base of wealth, you have to have a poor or ignorant base. That is why you see some of our people vote against their own interests, who are in rural areas, because their value financially versus who they are when it comes to their ethnic, it doesn't play out for them very well. So they go against their own interest just to accommodate the lie. And that's a survival technique. And so what has happened is you create the lie, and now you have to make everybody adopt the lie if they want to survive. So capitalism does not allow you to love your brother. It does not allow you to see your brother as an equal. And I don't even want to say equal, because those are terms that are used by colonizers. They're afraid of equality.
Right.
I'm just human. Right. I'm not trying to be. I'm not trying to be equal you, and you don't need to be equal with me.
That's
when
right.
I see you, I see myself.
Right.
So there is really no issue. I wouldn't let you starve.
Right.
I wouldn't let you be homeless. I don't know how equal, why we need to have a battle over equality for that, but
Yeah.
it's just some basic tools. These rules come up because we don't have people who have sound human doctrine.
Wow. Yeah.
You got to take a Hippocratic oath so you don't experiment on the children. What? You got to swear that you're not going to put. These are things that you would have thought humanity would have overcome by now.
Mm-hmm.
But of course,
Inhumane.
yes, we are still dealing with war crimes with humans. Why would you give your brother anything that you wouldn't take yourself? That's the issue. And something is wrong with you upstairs.
That is facts. And it's a lot of double standard I'm hearing, and we know we see officers committing murder, assassinating brothers and sisters day in and day out, and they get to walk free.
Right.
And we can commit any type of minor crime. We spoke on habitual status and all different. We can commit any type of minor crime, and it's possible to come out of that with a life sentence. So,
Okay, if you don't mind, I want to touch just briefly on that, brother. Essence.
yes,
We talking about the police.
mm-hmm.
We talk about they kill,
Yes,
and they particularly kill more African Americans than any other culture or any other race. However, you don't see that reciprocated amongst other blacks against white children or white males. Why? Because we normally know how to de-escalate.
right,
So this de-escalation training or law or training is only necessary for those who are out of control. So anytime that they are found out of control, do you notice the first thing they go to is we need more
What's
training.
that training? Yeah,
We need more training. But we never see you killing white people. So then how is it that you need more training? Maybe you need more training on not to hate blacks.
right.
And black officers do not kill white.
No,
So what is going on with them? Are they behaving differently? Is the drug different when they reach them? I'm almost certain, Brother Kevin, who know the streets, and you too, Brother Essence, that crack drug is no different on our streets than it is to the next person.
exactly right.
So then how is it that when you reach ours, they deserve to die? When you reach them, their lives are spared.
Ain't that something? So
They get treatment. They get taken to the hospital. Curtis Mangum instead was taken to the precinct and strip searched. Even though he was less than a mile and a half away from the hospital, they took him to be strip searched a mile and a half further away. So this is about the quality of life. This is not about justice. It's already embedded in their institutions who is valuable and who is not. And I'll say this. The injustice, let's take it before slavery. Before slavery, you were really not allowed to kill your slave. They had laws in place because we were valuable. As a matter of fact, they had a law that says you could beat your slave an inch near death. So you could beat us, but you couldn't kill us.
right.
Now you tase us, we can't get to the curb. We can't run out the parking lot before you kill us. Why? Because the value has decreased so low that we're expendable.
Y'all think about that. That's real deep right there.
Oh yeah, you could chase us to the edge of Canada,
Yeah,
and you better bring us back alive under the Fugitive Slave Act. But now, our black men are dying on the curb.
right. Because it sounded like at that time we was commodity because we was their labor force, and not saying that but the labor force is different now. So, but what it sounds it's interesting to me because black or white officers only kills one kind of people. Is it in the training? Is it something that they're that's
course, it's in the training
Yeah.
because it's really it's all psychological, right? And it's all a strategy and a tactic in the game, right? Because remember last week when we talked about the American Psychological Association, right? And the role that they have played in causing mental health issues in the African American community, right? And so you got to understand the connection, between the psychologists and law enforcement, right? So law enforcement, the reason why, and I'm pretty sure y'all know this, that they created the police force anyway was basically after slavery, right?
Go ahead on, brother. Go ahead on and teach on it.
Lock up black people. So it's one target, right? So it's totally different when we understand, like I say, the American Psychological Association, right? The way that they work with European patients and the way they work with, African patients or African American patients. It's the same with law enforcement. When they're dealing with a European, they're dealing with a European in a certain type of way. When they're dealing with an African person, they're looking at them with suspicion immediately.
That's right.
And even if it's not suspicion, based off of their bias and their racism, the way they've been taught and trained
That's right.
to deal with black people is one of aggression and hostility. That's why they have to use the word de-escalate.
That's right.
Who has to de-escalate? The person they're talking to, or do they have to de-escalate themselves? Right? Because the only thing they have to do, they are taught and trained when they hear the word gun to just start firing.
Yeah.
Right? And that's one of the excuses that they use is that they saw a gun. It might be a phone. It might be a cell phone. That's why I advise people to be wise. We having like holsters on your belt buckle to hold your phone because they swear it was a gun. And it's just a phone. Right?
That's true.
When we understand the miscarriage of justice, right, we got to understand that a lot of it is dealing with the mentality and psychology of the way Europeans feel about African Americans.
So it's is it premeditated, Brother Kevin?
Yeah, it's premeditated.
Okay.
And this is the one thing that they use more than anything against us, and that's us. Right? They'll make our police chief a black person, African American. That way it make it seem like it's not a racist police force. They'll make the sheriff an African American and make it look like it's not a racist sheriff department. Right? You have a warden that's African American. Right? So they use us against us to try to justify the injustice that we receive. Because they think when we see a black person, automatically we're going to think that this black person going to have our back, but that's not the way it works.
Or that the system is safe.
Indeed. Yes. And it's never been safe for us. I think we can, through, our radio, podcast that we show every week, we've been outlining clearly as far as how this thing is not only continuous, but it's deliberate and it's intentional. Right? And what we do, unfortunately, is we want to deny what's right in our face.
That's right.
We want to have, as Dr. Amos Wilson said, positive hallucinations where something is right in our face, but we can't see it.
That's true.
You get what I'm saying?
That's good.
Like racism. How they target our children, not only for miseducation, but to put them on these psychotropic drugs.
Right.
As the American Psychological Association admitted. Right? That's why I recommended that we don't let them assess us on anything, when it comes to mental health. Right. Because they need to evaluate themselves. Right? So, when we're talking about the miscarriage of justice, it's something that's been happening to us as a people for a long time, right? And unfortunately, some of our professionals try to take the soft side and want to blame the victim, and they want to blame the parents, they want to blame the children, they want to blame the community, but they will not put the blame where it belongs, which are on the institutions that intentionally set out to damage and oppress all African minds.
Now, let me ask you this, Brother Asar. I hear what Brother Essence is saying as well. And what I'm believing, and you can correct me on this, is that I think we may be afraid to say these systems were set up to ensnare us. So that's a harder pill to take. And then we just hope that if we be good servants and be good employees, and get paid and be nice and don't rock the boat, that eventually we'll show massa in them how to be nicer people. And don't do that now because we done showed you how to be civilized. And for years, that has been our MO in how we have tried to manipulate this system into being just for us. So we wait it out. We won't rock the boat and talk about racism. We'll wait in hopes that you will have a nice conversation about it. And then here comes the EEOC because we can't wait too long. And here comes the George Floyd issue, and so forth and so on. Again, I just don't think African Americans, we have begged to be included for so long
Yeah.
until we because I even hear either two things from white America is not my responsibility. I wasn't there to enslave you, or we've given you, quote unquote, this. We've allowed you to, or we've given you, or allowed you to sit in the front seat. We allowed you now. What else do you want? This mentality of I gave you freedom. I gave you a drink of water. I let you sit in the front. I let you. Anytime you have to let me and I'm a human, that still means that you're the dominating source.
That's right.
Right. And what you're saying, and a lot of people still know that the system is broken. It's not, functioning for the best of our ability. But a lot of people think that it is working,
That's
like it
because they're not.
should.
That's
It's
because they're
designed.
not hanging from a tree.
Got you. So as generations continue to come about, and and the story continues to, and the ones that's for instance, if I think the system, if it's working well for me, my job is doing well, I'm able to take care of just my household or whatever, and I feel that it's great and it's moving as designed. As generations come behind me and I'm telling them the same, as it continue to go, how are we gonna change the mentality of the generations to come? Or can't you follow what I'm trying to
Oh
ask
yeah,
here?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I believe what your brother Kevin. Did you want to speak to that?
Yes,
Go ahead.
because I mean, I think that what we have here is what Kwame Ture said, one of our great revolutionaries, and he said you had some people who wanted to fight the system, to join the system, and to be treated better. And then you had another group of people, the revolutionaries, who wanted a whole new system
Right.
where it was going to be equitable from the beginning, right? So, and that's a really good, analogy and comparison that Kwame Ture made, and I think that's what we face today. Because, like, when we talk about, our professionals that work for the city, the county, the state, or national government, or even international government, right? And so they're part of a system that they're supporting that's oppressing their own brothers and sisters, right? So you got a lot of people who, like, Dr. Kim was explaining, and like you were saying, who we want to be treated better. We want to be treated more equitable in a more equal manner where, we can have a good job, like you said, Brother Essence, pay our bills and pass that knowledge down. But that's not really success. That's just based off of limited knowledge, based off of, whatever it is that person, knowledge they had received, information throughout their life. But when you really, dig and search and research and try to learn as much as you can about history, you'll see that's really what considered to be the American dream, which you was describing is really the American nightmare. Because what that can do is set us back even further within our consciousness where we think that we're doing something good and we're benefiting. And then, unfortunately, this triggers something in our mind where we look at our brothers and sisters and think, well, if I can do it, they can do it. Without understanding that, it's nothing wrong with you being successful as an individual. Their main concern is for us not to be successful as a group, as a whole, so that we can really have power as a people. And I think that that's one of the things that we need to look at and stop trying to assimilate and integrate our way into a system that was not designed for us.
Right. Right. I don't want to go too far off script here, but I want to open the minds and including myself because I'm trying to get people to get an understanding of what's happening here. So I guess right now what I'm getting to, and I don't want to be too far off script. So say for instance, even the drugs that's given to us, the medicines that's given to us for supposed to be for help, for healing, or have you not, whatever, such as I got a headache, I take me something for my headache, but side effect, it's gonna give me kidney failure in the long run. Even this type, how do we start, getting our mind to understand that, the design is more of a money grab than is really for the benefit of our mental, our spiritual, our health as a whole.
Well, I think that's true education. That's the truth of education because education has a destination. So whatever it attaches itself to is designed to change its population. And when we educate, does the education that we receive actually change the dynamics of how we live and how we end up in the outcome? What does our numbers look like? What does our community look like? Is what they feed is what we are being fed in their institutions
Right.
actually equating to health or wealth or better living? What do we look like in comparison to what education that we're receiving? And if you look at our communities and you don't see it, then something is missing or something is not connected, whereby the conduit of true education should be changing the dynamics of who we are. And that is why it's imperative that we put a demand even on our own people to get the right education and now get it too, because education to ourselves is not powerful at all. Is when that knowledge is dispersed. Or is our communities set up to receive the education needed so that we can make the proper changes and adjustments so that we can see what the whole loaf is about? Or are we still in survival mode? Where are we at in this journey called education? And so I think that's why it's so powerful that Brother Star and yourself, Brother Essence, are in the communities with the children. Because if the only education that they receive is from the institution that kills them, beats them, punishes them,
Right.
and medicates them Monday through Friday, when do they ever get the quality education,
Yeah.
the camaraderie that because once they get to school, it's a fight, it's an argument, it's something. When they come home, they can't relate until Saturday when you guys come and teach them how to engage one another and
Right.
talk to each other the right way and decision making and mind building and goal setting, all of those things that make a healthy
Right. Right.
that part of medicine is just as important as a pill.
That's right.
That is our true medical is prevention. When we have healthy and holistic communities, you read out pills. I can tell you that the population that's making the pills in RTP is not the population popping the pills because they are healthy.
Yeah.
They have healthy households, healthy communities, healthy pockets.
Yeah.
And they're not looking for the alternative school to drop out early. They're looking for the schools that will let them stay in longer so they can have larger impact. We can barely stay in school past 11th grade.
Yeah. Facts.
I think that I want to add this right quick because I know you got to move on, brother. Because we're talking about a miscarriage of justice, right? And we're talking about the United States government, and we're talking about the Europeans. But I think also that we have to take some accountability as far as the miscarriage of justice to ourselves as well.
Okay.
That's so true.
Okay.
We have to take some accountability, with the our African American politicians, lawyers, judges, police officers, and even the community. You know what I mean? We have to take responsibility, because there is always going to be a miscarriage of justice when we don't really have the proper knowledge and knowledge of self,
That's true.
right? Because we're going to look at ourselves as, subordinate, because, and we're going to look at the Europeans as what? Superior, because that's where our minds have been trained. So if our minds ain't taught and trained in the proper way, that's going to be a miscarriage of justice against us. The scales of Maya are going to be unbalanced. And remember, Maya is truth, justice, and righteousness, right? So our true justice, right, and our truth is in knowing who we are as a people. So if we don't set our minds and understand, the more we know about ourselves, the better we are to protect ourselves. Because knowledge is the first line of defense that we have, our minds. Like we often repeat what Stephen Biko said of South Africa. The most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed.
That's right.
That's why we have to take control over our own minds, right? And it's a miscarriage of justice when we don't do this, especially for those of us in the know, those of us with the knowledge of self have a responsibility. Those who have a high level of consciousness understand our role in trying to help our brothers and sisters who might not have reached that level of consciousness, right, to let them know of their unconscious behavior or things that we can do to improve ourselves. We always have to be, strategic, and, we have to be understanding, right, and working with our brothers and sisters, right, and talking to our brothers and sisters, and really trying to help to open up the minds of our brothers and sisters as far as what's going on and in the world and how we're a target. But and we always, and we speak a lot about those who have oppressed us, but at the same time, the knowledge of self is our protection. And that's why we always speaking on know thyself, right? And the basis of all true knowledge is the knowledge of self. Because once we understand who we are, it strengthens our consciousness, it strengthens our mind, it strengthens our spirit, and then we understand and we know as a people that we are second to none. We are the original people.
Yeah. You want to?
Well, and let me say this too about the miscarriage of justice. Everybody has a role to play. Everybody has a role to play as a defense, whether it's a police, whether it's a political person, educators. What makes it a system is that everybody knows their role to play, and they depend on each other. And I think about a couple of weeks ago, we talked about how, for example, we see legislators who are in the legislation portion, but their children are in the judicial portion. And so they know each role to play, and they groom them to be in those roles knowing what to do and how they intertwine and affect each other. The problem is we don't have a system that protects our people. Policy is for protection. When you say the speed limit is 95, it is to protect the people in that. You can't fly down this street because of the population around you. But you can do 70 on the highway. So when you write these laws, it's for protection. Well, are we articulating what is our ailments? Are those on the bottom relating that message to the top so that the policies can be made to protect us?
That's right.
And that is what the miscarriage is, because once you get in your place and don't know what you're supposed to do, mind you, we're supposed to send you. No one should ask you, what are you going to do for us? We should be sending you to do something specific for our people. And when you don't have that, that creates the miscarriage of justice. Is not knowing what you're supposed to do.
That's something. And each week I'm noticing a pattern. We could be talking about mental health, and then it all ties back to politics, to education. We could be talking about the school system, and then it all to tie in together again. So the system is running. Real quick.
And could I just implement this part? And I know you all, I'll bring this real current. If you'll notice, we just looked at the court case, Brother Asar, of a young white male who shot up and killed 5 people in Headingham community. Do you know? After, and this happened October of 2022. We 3 years later. They just decided that he is basically almost not responsible because his medication. He was on medication at the time. So did we have to wait so that they could come up with a,
An excuse.
an
Yeah.
excuse
Yeah.
in order for him to be released from killing 5 people, wounding 2, and killing a dog? So again, those policies would never work for us. When the last time you seen that policy applied to any of our black boys? See,
Nah.
when those policies are created, they're created to protect a certain population.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're gonna get back on script just for a second because this is so interesting to me because now, and I'm a parent also. So what I want to know, like, okay, we got to send it's policy. We got to send the children to school, and that's a form of indoctrination. The curriculum that's being pushed on them, and it's a certain curriculum you got to follow to even be recognized to move on through the school system to even to try to get out of there. Other than what brother saw myself, what we try and bring forth one day out of the week, how do we start to design something that we could start educating our children ourselves, even if they still go through the education system that they have to, but we still need to educate them ourselves. How do we start as a whole in other communities, not just here, communities worldwide? How we start to build that and start moving towards that goal?
That independence, independent thinking for education,
Right,
despite the system.
right.
Right. Well, I believe there are mechanisms out there. Of course, we actually started that with Raleigh Locke, saying that we really needed something that we could put in the homes independent of the system. I believe we still have that duty and obligation to start that trend. Is to say, educate yourself, educate your own children, and make that something that's trendy for African Americans. Because a lot of times we hear the word independent education and we automatically think private, and private means private school, private funding, and you don't have the money. But we can educate our children right in our homes for free. There are ways that we can adopt concepts where we are teaching our children at all times. We just have to teach the parents how to be educational focused. Because usually for us, once the education stop at school, we're done. Like the child go to school. Did you go to school today? Yes, you did. And that's it.
That's it.
When they come back, when they come home, your environment is got BET, Twitter, TikTok, Willy Wonka, and the Chocolate Factory. So, and that is what has created us now. And mind you, that has become more of the social norm for blacks
Yeah.
in a lot of homes than education. So how do you expect them to go to a 4-year college when they come home and be with you? You do not represent education.
I follow you.
You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
what
follow
what message are we sending our children? So if we don't work with the adults to start changing the dynamics of their thinking, they're not going to have anything to pass down in their own environments.
Right.
So we really have to almost, what do you call that? With the jumper cables, we almost have to like
Jumpstart,
We
yeah.
have to resuscitate
Right. Resuscitate.
our people back into wanting to even wanted to be personal educators, because it's just not something that we commonly practice.
All right. I'm gonna just make this statement on it and then I will move on, promise you, because I'm highly concerned because this is some stuff I still battle with myself. Now you talk about some household that got multiple children. One parent, even two parents. One parent might work the second shift when the first parent worked the first shift. The parents got to work, and it's just no time and no they just don't have the resources, or they just don't know how to go about finding the proper resources to get these type of things done. And If y'all want to comment on what I'm saying, please feel free. But yeah.
Yes, I want to comment to the previous question as well, because you was talking about us educating our children in our communities outside of school, which is very important. I think that unfortunately, like what Dr. Kim just stated, we ask the child if they go to school, they say yeah, and we satisfied.
Right.
There we go with the being trustworthy again,
Okay.
and being ignorant again.
That's right.
Right, because and I don't say that to be mean or anything like that, but we're all too trusting of people who have intentionally set out to hurt us and have hurt us for years, thousands of years, as a matter of fact. So like the great Malcolm X said, only fool will send his children to school to be educated by the enemy, and that's exactly what we do, right? And we trust in them too much. But not only that, right? As an African people, I think it's so important for us to become African centered in our way of thinking with an African centered orientation. Because I think if you ask a European person, and I've stated this before on the show, is it better for them to have a Asian philosophy, European or African? They'll say European. If you ask an Asian man, is it better to have an African philosophy, European philosophy, or Asian? They'll say Asian. But if you ask a black man, is it better to have a European philosophy, or Western philosophy, Asian or African-centered philosophy, they're going to look at you like you crazy. Right? Because we're not taught African-centered way of thinking. We have been taught to imitate and mimic our enemies, right? And we feel like, and that's what's really has held us back more than anything, is trying to mimic and imitate those who have hurt us. So what that does is it helps us to hurt our own brothers and sisters the same way the Europeans do, even with capitalism, right? Because you have a lot of, unfortunately, people who try to capitalize off of our struggles. And I'm talking about our own brothers and sisters, right? So, we really have to understand that in order, for us to have these type of programs and curriculums dealing with the African-centered orientation in our community, that it's going to take a conscious effort of many brothers and sisters to wake up and understand not only who we are as a people, but what we have to do in this day and age, moving forward, how we connect with each other. Because unfortunately we do a lot of talking, but we don't do a lot of connecting. How do we connect with our brothers and sisters throughout not only the city and the state and nationally, but throughout the diaspora and internationally? We got a lot of good talkers, but we got to have workers. We have got to be workers. We have got to understand how our ancestors were able to pay attention to nature and watch the ants build the ant mounds and things of that nature and replicate that through building pyramids and working together, and how it was strength in numbers, how they was able to move things 100 times, their weight. And I think that when we get our consciousness back and connect back to nature, right, and stop dealing with all this artificial intelligence and understand that human intelligence is higher than artificial intelligence, right?
Yes.
I think that's when we'll start to connect and understand what we need to do in our communities. But one of the first things we need to do is accept ourselves, accept that we are African people, accept that our heritage, right, and accept one another.
Yeah.
That's good.
That makes sense to me.
Can I just say one small part? And
Yes.
I promise I'll let you get back up. Let me see. You are in trouble today, Brother Essence, for allowing the breakdown of, because none of these questions are something, radio audience. Let me remind you that these are layered issues.
Yeah.
These are not something like what we believe we snap our fingers and get it together, it just all goes away. No. These things are so intertwined, the injustices, the miscarriage of justice, and because it's a system, you can find the same injustice, like you said, from education to health to every aspect of it. Now, when I think about health, I also think about education. But when I think about health and education, I also think to myself, lean thinking. Education for us is oppressive. It takes just the same amount of energy in our communities to make our young men read as it is to see us walking in our neighborhood or on the greenway. You don't see us utilizing certain avenues to health, even though it's there. Because, first of all, we have to almost shed all of the other heavy lies that are on us. So, by the time our children walk in the door, we're not in education mode. Education is not something that we do, education is who we are.
Yes.
See, and for us, education is a task. You know, our children, do I gotta read? When other cultures welcome information because
Right.
they know it's gonna be powerful. For us, it's like, well, how long is the book?
Yeah.
How thick is the book? You know, like it's a task because we don't see ourselves using it individually or collectively later on. See, education has to be something that when we see it, we know it's going to benefit us.
That makes sense.
And that's a healthy mindset. But that health will go to other areas too. That's why you'll see the city of Raleigh playing for greenways and bike lanes and walking paths. But that's for those who are already at city council every time it opens.
Okay.
Moms of Liberty, I'll send, I know you, Moms of Liberty. We are in public school. But Moms of Liberty will show up at Wake County Public Schools to ban books. What are they doing? They will not just teach their children to read. They reading beforehand what it is their children are going to read.
Right.
And they go to the school system and says, remove this book because this is against their whatever, whether it be age appropriateness or adult or child-centered appropriateness, whatever. They are protecting, and now they're going to use the law from the knowledge that they receive. Are we doing that? We are we protecting our children from the very resources that they put in front of our children? Are we just sending them, like you said, Brother Kevin, to the oppressor, and whatever the system say, we're okay? No, but that's because we are physically and mentally tired.
Right.
You cannot wage war. You can't be on the defense if you are tired. And our people are exhausted.
Definitely. And everything you're saying, it makes sense to me, perfect sense, because right now I'm dealing with a dilemma with one of my youths in school. He's in German.
German?
Yeah.
He's taking the language,
Yeah,
the German language.
right? And his teachers, I spoke with his teacher through text. We do text messaging back and forth. But his teacher, like, he didn't do too well on this what was it, Dunsland test. I'm like, okay, well, I'll go over it with him because this is what I do. I sit with my children and we go over. We do, I try to help them with
Right.
what I can. And I'm like, I'll go over it with them, and if we need help, we'll reach back out to you. So I'm looking, I'm like, hold on, this is just, first of all, I don't know it,
Right.
but
How can I help them? Right.
but like, what is it beneficial for? Let me get back on track here, right? Like, because well, we on miscarriages of justice in American Tale, because what we can, this is for a whole nother show. We'll get back to this. I promise y'all out there, we'll get back to this again soon, because it is important. But miscarriages of
before
justice.
before you go on,
yeah.
that is a miscarriage of
It
justice.
is. It is.
The miseducation of our children.
Yeah.
I just want to say that.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Like,
Well, listen, these are real life experiences this is our lived experience. What makes this argument so powerful? Because we experience this from these microorganisms out there are always touching us in some kind. And listen, too many of those microorganisms on us weigh us down. We get hit with, we are hit and bombarded with so many things. Sometimes we are so weighted down with racial pathogens till we don't even know we weighty.
Right,
Yeah, am I, brother Kevin? Am I right when I say sometimes we are so weighted
Yeah.
till we don't even recognize how weighty we are with these realities, and then by the time you hear us or hear that we have things that we need to be liberated from into, you need a whole seminar just to decompress or take off some of these constant bombardments of injustice to the point where you first of all got to come to grips that it is an injustice.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. And so we didn't go too far off script because it all is an injustice. My apologies, Pharaoh. I hope I didn't embarrass you. Um, uh, so the miscarriage of justice, and it isn't just local, as Brother South spoke earlier. It's
That's
a
right.
global thing also.
Yes.
And in July 2021, the UN, United Nations Human Rights Council, established the international independent expert mechanism to advance racial justice and law enforcement. Uh, yeah, that's as I stated earlier when I said all that. That's a mouthful to say, but they what it means is this: the world sees the injustice, the world knows the truth. So here are 12 key elements they laid down for the justice system. Hopefully, hoping that it can improve it. I'm thinking, nonetheless, and I'm gonna go through these 12 key elements, and I want y'all to feel free to jump in on any one of them at any moment. And please, I'm encouraging you to. One, elimination of racial profiling. States must adopt a legal framework to that explicitly prohibits racial profiling with clear and objective criteria for stop and search checks. Accountability mechanisms should be established.
Yes, let me. I would like to jump in, right? Because I think that this is very important. Because here we have the United Nations, right? And we had went over, their date of establishment in 1945, the United Nations, and why the United Nations was established, taking the place of I forgot the name of what it was before. League of Nations. It was the League of
League of
Nations.
Nations,
Right.
yeah.
And then they became the United Nations. And the reason why they established, which was European countries, was right after World War II. Right. They said that they had to rebuild Europe. Right. And basically they knew to rebuild Europe that they would have to continue their exploitation, oppression of Africa and their resources.
Okay.
Right. So now here it is. We got the Human Rights Council, the Human Rights Council, which is a department or division of the United Nations. Right. So in July of 2021, they established what you had just stated, the International Independent Expert Mechanism to Advance Racial Justice and Equality in Law Enforcement, right? So what they had to do was they got independent experts from all over the world. The current chairman of them right now is a sister from Ghana who was on the International Criminal Court, which was established in 2002. She was the first vice president, right? So it's important to understand that the people on this council or committee, they're not getting paid by the United Nations. What they're trying to do is, as you just stated, the first point that they're trying to make is come up with ways to protect Africans and Africans, people, black people of African descent globally, right? Because this is a global proposal that they put together with the 12 points to cut down on the racial discrimination of all African people throughout the world, right? So it's important to understand that the United Nations is at the head of all of this. And they are to blame the United Nations for a lot of the oppression, exploitation, murder, because they give the law enforcement the power to do the things that they do. Because it's the Security Council, which is a major aspect of the United Nations. They have five permanent seats on the United Nations. And what these 5 permanent nations can do, these 5 permanent seats, they can veto anything they want to. And they can give the go-ahead on whatever they want to go globally. This is what they have established. It's supposed to be legal, right? But it's really illegal. They just put things on paper and say it's legal, expect the rest of the world to go by it. Right? The 5 permanent countries on the Security Council are the United States, which is at the head, Great Britain, France, Russia, and China, all world powers, right? So when you understand you got this world power, United States, and then you got the Human Rights Council, and then they put together the International Independent Expert Mechanism to Advance Racial Justice and Equality in Law Enforcement, all them fancy words, right, and fancy titles, right, to cut out racism in law enforcement. The question is, why is there racism in law enforcement to start with?
All right.
Because the law is supposed to be just.
Right.
So if you're discriminating against people, you are being unjust.
Right.
So this is an admission, by the United Nations that there is unjust behavior amongst law enforcement in dealing with African people and African Americans.
That's right.
Like, we're so used to dealing with it where we think it's normal now.
That's right.
And it's okay, and it's not okay, and it's not normal. It's the behavior of sick people, right? So I don't think we should be fooled, when we get people who come together and put together these 12 points, even though, it's a good thing, that the queen, the sister from Ghana, is doing, and some of the other people. But at the same time, if the hearts and the minds don't change of the people, right, nothing else is going to change. But the first people who hearts and minds need to change is us of African descent.
Okay.
Us African people.
Yes.
That's why the knowledge of self is so important. And that's why we're always talking about philosophy and psychology, so that we can get our minds together, right? Because if we understand that on the United Nations level, right, that they're admitting to the oppression of black people,
That's right.
right, that we have to realize that we have an open enemy, as the most honorable Elijah Muhammad always called them, the Europeans, an open enemy, right? So, brother, I just wanted to give a little background, on the organization, the Human Rights Council in the United Nations before you continue with the 12 points.
All right. Yeah, cool. And something you said out of that, instead of trying to hold them to morals or whatever, first and foremost, we need to look into ourselves and know ourselves. It starts with us first. Right. Get our own heart in the right place and then move on. Number 2, use of disaggregated data. It's mandatory collection of data disaggregated by race or ethnic origin at all stages of the criminal justice process is essential to identify patterns of systemic discrimination and inform targeted policy responses.
You want to touch on that, Dr. Kim?
Well, I believe that data plays a role in the way things are, the outcomes of how things are done. Now, how it relates to this particular group, it would be interesting to know, are they using it to better the lives or the quality of life for African Americans or for all people, or is this used against us? Because we know in the past, they have used data to be used against us in so much they've been able to steal entire communities. When they say crime in Blythe, as soon as they have enough crime, that means we could take your whole community. So is the data that they're collecting for us or against us? And that would be, and that to me has not been made clear in their objective.
Okay. So basically, the data they gaining and using is not ethical. They're not using it. They're not using it ethically at this moment in time.
Right,
So,
and even with resources, I mean, Africa is exploited based off of number,
right.
not based off of data. Like how much cobalt do you have, and how do they use those numbers into whose gain?
I don't think we can ever trust them with data, because I think they always use data to their advantage or our disadvantage.
That is correct.
Right, and one thing that I've been taught is this, and I've noticed it to be true, is they love reporting on negative data in our communities. Like when we talk about how the low literacy rate of our children, they love them type of reports, right? Because then what that does is let them know that their system is doing exactly what it was designed to do, right? So, and I think even this global international data that they're talking about, right? They're talking about, and one statistic, that I ran across, well, we ran across, me and Linda Darton. Shout out to Linda Darton,
Yes.
KCSSU's
Yes.
wonderful administrator and a good friend of mine as well, my study
Yes.
partner. We do research together. And that was because we're talking about a miscarriage of justice, right? And we're also talking about unlawful arrests, unlawful convictions, based off of, faulty witness details, faulty investigations and things of that nature. And it was reported, that African Americans or black people are 19 times more likely to get arrested and convicted of a violent crime or murder as opposed to Europeans, right? So this isn't a statistic that's based off of crime. This is a statistic that is based off of false accusations and false imprisonment. So I think if you look at that number, we're 19 times as likely to get falsely charged than the European. That data cannot benefit us in any type of way. What that data tells us is the mentality and the psychological makeup of our enemies in law enforcement, right? And that law enforcement play a major vital role in the misincarceration or the false imprisonment, of African people. And also, one of the things that me and Linda discovered when we were studying and research is that there are more people locked up in the world now, and we could say the United States, that are innocent than ever, on this planet. Like, you talking about a lot of people who are innocent but are locked up, and this is something that I can speak directly to. Even though I may have a little criminal record behind me, some people would even call it extensive. When I had to go do my 9 years, my 10-year sentence in federal prison, it was a false conviction, right, based off of lies, and everybody that was in there. And I know this personally, so can't nobody tell me, because I took them to trial and I sat up there, right, and I watched the way the court operated and the way they manipulated and the way the jury feel like it's their duty and responsibility to go with the court regardless of the facts, right? So this happens time and time again, with black people, not only here in the United States, but globally, and the statistics show that. So the statistics, what it's showing us is nothing good for black people. It's bad for black people when law enforcement look at us like that. So I think that data, is used in two ways. One way to see just how effective they're being in oppressing us. And a second, if they're not oppressing us enough, what can they do, to step on our necks a little bit harder? Yeah.
And let me say this, in combination with what Brother Asar brought to the table, you're exactly right. Some of these numbers are to build the case law that says our people are savages and deserve to be targeted or deserve to be pulled over. When you have these numbers, it actually justifies them putting even more pressure or even adding more police officers. It's justifying. It justifies raises. It justifies higher positions. It justifies, and those numbers are used to increase. So by the time you kill one of us, they've already made their argument with those numbers to say this person deserved to die. And so, and that is where you get where it's very hard even to move black people in education, because once you've heard that so much, that's marketing. Those numbers are marketing numbers. And even us, it'll dumb us down. We'll go from, and that is how George Floyd actually died. George Floyd died not because he did anything wrong, but they had demonized George Floyd's long before he was murdered. what people don't recognize is that Derek Chauvin actually has 17 prior grievances against him before he killed George Floyd.
17 grievances.
He had 17 outstanding grievances against him already.
Wow.
So it wasn't a matter of who, it was a matter of when.
Mm-hmm.
It don't matter if it was George Floyd. He had already been almost deputized to kill one of us.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't catch him at victim number 5 or victim number 10, victim 18 was not going to matter.
Right.
And he knew that.
Mm-hmm.
He rolled the dice. They do not check people like me because they had demonized black men and basically made him a hero. So he, in broad daylight, with his knee on this man's neck, would not have ever imagined that they were he would be in a courtroom one day.
Right.
He had never imagined that because all of the marketing had went towards demonizing.
That's right.
Yeah.
So he could have put his knee there another 9 minutes, and he still wouldn't have believed he would have been convicted.
Right.
Because they could explain away he could use the demology of what he had already been done previous. See, and that is what policy does. It patents or protects a certain population.
Yeah.
Mind you, the chief of police was black.
Most of the time.
And there you go. Those are war tactics where I put you in front as my shield.
Mm-hmm.
While I'll allow white supremacy to continue.
Yes.
And even though he filed a lawsuit against the police department, that very police department, he filed a lawsuit against Minneapolis Police Department for his own injustice, but he couldn't see it in the other 17 victims of this man.
Right.
So that's why he actually resigned. So look at the mentality of what we're dealing with. This is not rocket science. This is almost, I wouldn't even call it injustice. I would call it a playbook of war.
I love that wordplay.
It's a playbook.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why Hitler did his playbook and probably was looking like, well, why are you trying me? We're at war.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we do.
I understand. I get it completely. And just so just to know, grievances is a complaint. He had 17 prior grievances before the murder of George Floyd.
Yes. And the one right before George Floyd was a 14-year-old black boy. He had put his knee on his neck. So they had to go back and compensate him.
You see what I mean? 14 years old, a baby.
Yes.
That takes me to number 3, establishment of accountability and oversight mechanisms. Internal police and judiciary accountability units empowered with investigative authority are crucial to ensuring transparency, justice, and institutional reform. And I mean, that pretty much, jump on in.
Yes, because, everything you just stated, basically, I think, Dr. Kim, isn't that your expertise here? Do you want to talk, to the listening audience about Molly Pack and basically what y'all do?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Thank you for the plug-in. Brothers, S is a brother, Asar. Yes. I am the executive director for Raleigh Police Accountability Community Task Force, where we believe in protecting the black community and other humans, but primarily black. Why? Because we are targeted. And we don't shy away from saying that. But our job is to make sure that we put policies in place to stop white supremacy. Yes, not to protect us from the police, because police are already trained to protect us. This is not police that we're coming against. We are holding police and all of humanity responsible to rid out white supremacy, because good police would rid out white supremacy. We're not saying all police are bad. We're saying the ones that allow it to be are upholding a white supremacist system. Mm-hmm. So that is what we do. That's our forte, and we've been, it's always an uphill battle because it reminds us of how embedded these systems are with it. It is in the foundation, in the fabric of how it was established. And it's sort of hard to get rid of it. That's why 400 years later, the very institution that was made to uphold white supremacy is being challenged. And people are like, how are we going to get it out? It's very difficult because you forgot it is the foundation as to why it was made.
Yeah. Right. And something stood out to me that you just said there. Not all are bad, but they are dwelling in a corrupt system
Absolutely.
at all times. So, Riley, Riley Pat, that's for Police Accountability Community Task Force.
Yes.
Remember that. And if you like, location, next function, anything like that.
So we do have an upcoming event that addresses the lynchings of African Americans, especially in the city of Raleigh, because we've had more lynchings in the south side of Raleigh, where African Americans primarily dwell. And let me say this, all of our lynchings or our murders have been by the hands of white males, predominantly white males. We haven't had a black killing of a black young man since the 80s. Ivan Ingram, by another black male that was sort of one-on-one. But all of our other murders are typically 4 to 5 other white males collectively on one black male. And so we are calling that a lynching. What it is. Now, whether you want to wear a uniform while you do it or not, it still mimics the lynchings. And we should not be paying to be lynched over nothing, over drugs, over whatever you want to call it. And so we are having a memorial in November to remind the community that we are valuable. And that we do not need to pay or finance our own abuse. And we're giving the city of Raleigh, Brother Asar has been very forthcoming in holding the city of Raleigh accountable, because July of 2023, the city apologized for all of its atrocities. And in that list, it says that they were sorry for the lynchings, yet they still continue
to lynch.
lynch. Right, exactly. So we are sending a SOS out to the city of Raleigh today, live, to say, hey, be ready to stand with us. Because one of the things, speaking of George Floyd, is that, his live lynching, because that was a lynching, the the oppression of the neck, the asphyxiation and not letting him breathe is a form of lynching. And, no longer are they hanging us by ropes. They are doing different demonstrations of lynching. But what it is it's a lynching because we can't get you down out that tree. Nor could we get this man off your neck. Because white supremacy says that we can kill you to the last breath. Remember, when I said prior to,
Right.
that it was an inch near death, now we have to watch you be lynched all the way out, and there is nothing that we can do about it. And so we are calling on Corey Branch. Yes, we're calling our very own. Why? Because Corey, our lynchings happen in District C.
Yes.
And so whatever is going on with our young black men, I'm sure is happening to other cultures. They're just not lynched for it. And when George Floyd was here, his murder and his family, you were very present. The city of Raleigh hugged and embraced them, whereas that has not happened with any of our black men killed by the police. And so we want to give our city council, who apologized, the space to embrace our victims. And they have not rectified that. So November is that time where the community is supposed to come in and say, hey, let's get this done. Let's say sorry to our African-American families. And let's fix our community so that we don't get targeted.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, no. I just think that, what Dr. Kim said is so important as far as, the local politicians taking responsibility instead of trying to duck responsibility and blame the victim. Talking about the victim tried to run or whatever. Instead of, I think if we deal with honesty and dealing with truth, if we deal with Mayat, truth, justice, and righteousness, right, then these politicians wouldn't have to make themselves look bad by making crazy comments, and basically defending criminals. Because just like Dr. Kim said, just because they had on police uniforms, don't make them not able to commit criminal acts.
That's right.
Because the murder, the young brother, on Rockquire Road at the Wee Bob's store, which is very popular.
Darryl Williams.
Darryl Williams.
Yes, sir.
2023 January. It just goes to show that the Raleigh Police Department, right? They're all for white supremacy because we had a black chief at the time, Miss Estella Patterson,
black female chief.
right? And they took the side of the white officers, right? And I ain't even think about the young brother who lost his life, and the injustice that he had to suffer, to be choked out and killed. And they look at that just like the European, the white man said, the way they used to look at lynchings. It's just a dog being killed.
It's true.
And then we have our police chief and our city councilman, and they're black. And they're looking at the young brother getting killed as just somebody getting killed, and he shouldn't have did this or he shouldn't have did that. They shouldn't have killed him. Because they say he had drugs on him. What if he had drugs on him, take him downtown, charge him with the drugs, lock him up, let him make bail or whatever. Right. But don't murder the man and kill the man and then try to sweep it up under the rug and try to pay it off and let these officers get off scot-free with murder.
Yeah.
You see, that's a miscarriage of justice in itself, and nothing is ever said about it. And they think it's just going to go away, but it can't just go away.
That is correct.
Just like the resolution.
Come on.
Right? And all the apologies for everything that the city of Raleigh has done, the African Americans, an empty apology with nothing behind it. Right? No type of change. Matter of fact, it ain't but so many brothers and sisters who even know about the resolution.
That's right.
Because it wasn't like it was really made public, right? So I just think that when we talk about accountability, the first thing we need to understand is that you have to deal with truth. And when you understand that this whole system is based off of lies, it's going to be hard for law enforcement or any other agency, right, to practice truth.
Absolutely. Brother Asar, you said, well, when we talk about holding our local politicians accountable, so they're in survival mode to keep their seat, but they're not there to keep truth.
Right.
So as long as they're in the way, they're in our way, and they need to be removed. Because first of all, I often say, if you have a 2-page document that apologizes for everything you've done to us, and nothing has changed, and you've had black politicians during all of this abuse, then we were not represented. And see, I'm gonna tell you what the white man would say. He would say, no taxation without representation. We're the only one trying to be represented by somebody that don't represent us, and still getting taxed. We have to come out of the mentality that, just give him a chance, and next year he may do better. Well, how many casualties have we had between when he started? And so all of the murders that have happened primarily are on Rockquire Road and Raleigh Boulevard.
Right.
Yeah.
In the black community, South Raleigh. And he has not been at any of our vigils.
You say he?
Corey Branch has not been to any black vigils who have died from white male hands. So when you say, so some people, it's Halloween time, y'all. Everybody dressed up in a cop uniform is not a cop. Some are dressed up in costumes. See, and we have been, some got cop uniforms on, and for us, some of them cop uniforms are costumes. They are dressed up, but they don't mean us no good. And
he city council for District 5,
District C. Absolutely. Have been for like
District C?
Southeast Raleigh.
Okay.
That's all of Chastain. That's all of Rockquire Road. That's all, a portion of downtown, all the way out to Capitol Boulevard, where Raleigh Boulevard and, these other areas into Headingham. Okay. It's a huge component of poor black people. And And to fix our problems is not to bring in rich white people. You know, I often say, and this goes with the miscarriage of justice, that the absence of crime is not the presence of justice.
That's right.
Just because you don't see crime don't mean we got justice.
Right.
It just means you locked us all up, or you're good management of humans. But that didn't mean we received the justice that we are supposed to receive. And that is what we're missing in our district, is that they don't give out justice. They manage Negroes.
Yeah.
And if we don't believe that, the language of the young people would change, because the young people say, Miss Kim, I'm going to stay out the way. No human should have to stay out the way. A human should be present. And so we haven't seen them present for us. They've taught us how to be managed and stay out the way.
Yeah. And
And that is how they conduct business
that's how
too.
they conduct- yeah. Just a quick statement from me with the way my facetious mind roll. The people you said the kid in Head and Ham, even the guy from that killed the 9 people in the church, their mental illness kind of get them away from the death penalty and all. Well, our brothers and sisters, Drapetomania was considered a mental illness, so we're running away from that oppression.
Right.
Please don't shoot us in the back. Anyway,
Right.
number 4.
Well,
Let
did
me
you all
continue.
see the state of North Carolina? And I'm gonna let you go there. State of North Carolina just passed a whole law against the black man who killed the white woman in Charlotte, who stabbed the white woman in the neck on the bus. They just created a whole law on violent crimes. They did not attribute anything that he did to mental illness. They sort of ruled out even discussing it.
Right.
So when our people really have a real mental illness, they don't even pay it any attention.
Right.
So,
Just create some for us when they wanted to benefit themselves, such as the Drapetomania. Number 4, mandatory comprehensive training and cultural competency, which is professionals should operate with an adequate understanding of the culture and historical backgrounds of the communities that they serve. Comprehensive and ongoing training on racism, history, implicit racial biases, and cultural competency is necessary to counteract prejudice and ensure fair justice outcomes. 5, community.
Can I comment on 4?
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of words there. You know what I mean? A whole lot of words that really, at the end of the day, mean nothing, right? Because they've been putting these kind of documents together for the longest. As me and Linda was as we was, studying and researching, we ran across, some things from the United Nations in 1963 and 1965, which is the year I was born. I was like, wow, that's 60 years ago, 60 years ago. And we still talking about the same thing today with no progress whatsoever. A lot of good fancy words about, justice and equality, and we're going to do this, for the people of African descent, and we've done this to them and that, and it's the same thing today. And I think that everything basically, that you were just saying, which was very wordy, is nothing in action.
That's
right? Where we can see the progress, or even many people won't even know about, these type of agencies coming out of the United Nations unless you look for it, right? So it's not something that they're trying to educate, the general population or the world population on, because, the less we know, the better it is for them to oppress us and exploit us, right? But I think that, aside from, all the words, we know that words mean nothing without action.
That's right.
That's why we say action speak louder than words.
Come on.
And there has been no action from the United Nations or any other international agency or local or national agency, basically, that's going to really, help, our agenda. I think that, they love putting out, these proposals and stuff like that to give us hope and inspiration.
Right.
But our hope and inspiration has to come from ourselves
That's right.
through the knowledge of self.
That's right.
And understanding that, the United Nations doubled down on the oppression and exploitation of black people, when they came up with the United Nations in 1945 to rebuild Europe. So we can never forget that. I think that, when we look at the work of Derek Bell, our outstanding, he's an ancestor now, but he was a attorney, right, and a legal scholar. And when he, basically came up with critical race theory, and it was interest convergence, right, where anything interest convergence is when, it seemed like they're doing something to help us out, as black people, African people,
Right.
but the benefit is really for
Them.
the Europeans or the United Nations to make them look a certain type of way. So I think we need to keep that in mind. And I just wanted to say that because, the words sound good, but we all know, the words are empty without action.
That's right. Absolutely.
And of course, we down to our final few minutes again. I'm gonna go through the rest of these 12 points, and I'll read a little bit behind it, and we can add on, and we can fill it out maybe later on in another show,
Right.
maybe even next week. We bring this on back up because it is important for everybody to get an understanding of what it's trying to say. Number 5, community participation, including participatory defense. That's marginalized communities should be able to participate meaningfully in the justice processes that affect them. Participatory defense models empower communities to play an active role in shaping legal defense strategies, reducing pretrial detention and harsh sentences. We need to touch that. 6, laws and policies without biases and with racial impact assessments. 7, sentencing reviews. That sentencing reviews allows courts to consider how a person's race, ethnicity, and cultural background may have shaped his or her experiences, interactions with the legal system, and pathways to offending. This more holistic, contextualized approach helps judges to move away from one-size-fits-all sentencing and towards more just and equitable outcomes. 8, diversity and representation across the justice chain. States should ensure adequate representation of Africans and people of African descent in law enforcement and the criminal justice system to foster public trust and combat systemic bias and racism. Justice institutions should reflect within their ranks the diversity of the communities that they serve. 9, alternatives to incarceration and restorative justice. 10, equal access to justice. That's discrimination impedes access to justice for many racialized individuals, especially where legal systems are under-resourced or inaccessible. Ensuring free access to timely, effective, adequately resourced, and affordable legal aid and interpretation services is crucial. 11, just and adequate reparations. Defendants of African descent should have access to remedies and redress for any wrongful convictions or decisions taken against them because of discriminatory policies and practices. This process must include financial compensation, public apologies, systemic reforms, and prosecutions and sanctions against those responsible for such acts. And 12 is equal access to bail and parole. The persistent discrimination faced by Africans and people of African descent when requesting bail and parole is deeply rooted in false assumptions. To ensure a process free of racial biases when granting bail or parole, objective criteria should be established, and independent and efficient supervisory bodies should regularly assess their application. And those are the 12 key elements that was given by the United Nations, what is it called again? International Independent Expert Mechanism to Advance Racial Justice and Equality in Law Enforcement. And people, we're down. I got questions behind those 12 elements and all. And like I said, we please, I'm going to bring it back next time we're here. I want y'all to remember that. But as always, we down to our final 30 seconds, and this is my sad time. So let
It's
me,
sad time.
yeah, let's keep this on. Let's close out. Let's keep this on our hearts. The miscarriages of justice aren't accidents; they're deliberate. They're a continuation of slavery, colonialism, and white supremacy. But knowing that truth is the beginning of power. Know thyself means know the system too. And our power is within ourselves. Until next time, know thyself, love our people, and walk in Black Power. This is African United, Know Thyself Black Power Radio, where Black consciousness is not just talked about, it's lived. Remember, proper education always corrects error.